There's something wrong with the Palmetto Galleria. Not wrong like broken pipes or flickering lights. Wrong like the building knows you're in it. Like the mannequins watch you walk past. Like the shadows shift when you're not looking. I was hired for the night shift. No gun, no flashlight. Just a clipboard, a uniform, and 3 strange rules. Rules that aren't just policy. They're survival instructions. Break them, and things happen. Things you can't unsee. Things that don't want to be seen. And yeah, I broke them. So before we start, subscribe to Night Creepypasta Rules. Leave a comment. What would you do if a mall fountain started running red? And whatever you do, watch this to the end. There's a twist. A bad one. And it doesn't stay inside the mall. There's a specific kind of silence in a shopping mall after midnight. Vast and hollow. Where the cheerful muzak ghosts away, and you can almost hear the building breathe around you. It's less an absence of sound and more a presence of emptiness, amplifying every scuff of your regulation shoes on the polished tile. Every distant hum from a drink machine. My first night shift at the Palmetto Galleria felt like stepping onto the deserted stage of a forgotten play. Under the relentless, buzzing glare of the fluorescent lights, the familiar storefronts looked alien. Theatrical. Mannequins posed in frozen aspiration had plastic smiles, unnerving in the dead quiet, their eyes seeming to follow you as you passed. The air tasted stale, a blend of floor wax, decaying food court grease from hours ago, and the faint, sweet perfume leaching from a closed cosmetics counter. Honestly, I took the job because rent was due and my savings account was basically a flat line. Leo Maxwell. Night shift security guard. It wasn't exactly the career path I'd envisioned when I was younger, but it paid, and supposedly required little more than staying awake and walking in circles. Keep your head down, collect the check. That was the plan. Serafina Bellwether, my trainer and shift supervisor, seemed to embody that ethos, albeit with a tightly coiled intensity that felt like more than just professional diligence. She was probably in her 40s, lean, moved with an efficient lack of wasted motion, her uniform sharp, her eyes missing nothing. "All right, Maxwell," she said, her voice crisp, businesslike, as she led me into the cramped security office tucked away behind a service corridor. The air here was thick with the smell of stale coffee. Rule 1 is stick to the patrol routes exactly. No detours. Rule 2 is log everything, even if it seems like nothing. Rule 3. She tapped a stained laminated card tacked to a corkboard already overflowing with faded memos. 3 typed lines stood out starkly. Parking garage lights, Morse code, do not decode. Child apparition, vanishing, do not chase. Fountain blood manifestation, do not report. I stared at it, a small laugh escaping before I could stop it. Is this serious? Like hazing for the new guy? Sarah's gaze snapped to mine, cold and hard. There was no amusement there, none at all. This isn't a joke, Maxwell. This is the job. You don't need to understand why. You just need to do exactly what it says. Her voice was flat, leaving absolutely no room for argument. You see any of that? You log it minimally. Electrical anomaly, Sector G. Visual disturbance, Sector C. Fountain malfunction, atrium. And you keep walking. Clear, I managed, the laugh dying in my throat. The intensity radiating from her was unsettling. Maybe it wasn't hazing. Maybe the graveyard shift here just attracted eccentricity. Or maybe years of patrolling this echoing mausoleum did something to people. She nodded curtly. Good, let's walk the first sector. We set off, our footsteps echoing unnaturally loud in the vast empty space. She pointed out emergency exits, fire extinguisher locations, security checkpoints, her voice a low monotone. We passed the darkened food court, the air still thick with the phantom smells of pizza and fried onions. As we neared the entrance to the shuttered children's play area, A sad collection of faded plastic slides and climbing frames visible behind a metal grate. I heard it, faint, almost subliminal, but distinct. The sound of a child's giggle, quickly stifled. I stopped, head tilted. Did you hear that? Sarah didn't break stride. Hear what? She asked sharply, not looking back. Sounded like a kid laughing. Acoustics in here are weird, she snapped, her voice cutting, dismissive. Pipe settling, air conditioning ducts. Focus, Maxwell. Stick to the procedures. The denial was too fast, too forceful. She knew I'd heard something, and she didn't want to talk about it. We continued walking, deeper into the fluorescent twilight of the Palmetto Galleria. But the silence felt different now, heavier, and I had the distinct, chilling feeling that we weren't entirely alone. The vast, echoing emptiness of the parking garage levels always felt colder, damper than the rest of the mall. Concrete pillars marched into shadow, swallowing the harsh fluorescent light. My footsteps sounded unnervingly loud down here. Part of my designated route involved checking the service access door on level B2. As I approached it one night, the overhead lights directly above me began to flicker erratically. Not just a random flicker, but a distinct, rhythmic pulsing. Off, long on, short on, off. Then repeating. My blood ran cold. Morse code. The sudden, insane urge to pull out my phone, look up the alphabet, decipher the message was almost overwhelming. What was it saying? A warning, a plea. Do not decode. Sarah's voice echoed in my head. I felt a prickle on my skin, a feeling of focused attention emanating from the blinking lights themselves. It felt like a test. Gritting my teeth, I forced myself to turn my back on the insistent pulsing, continuing my patrol towards the service door, my heart hammering against my ribs. When I mentioned the faulty wiring in the garage to Sarah later during our brief shift overlap by the time clock, she barely glanced up from her paperwork. Ignore it, Maxwell. Electrical grid in this place is ancient. Stick to your route. But her eyes, when they did flick up to meet mine for a second, were sharp, assessing. Did she know? Later that shift, I saw Jasmine Carr, Jazz she preferred, wrestling a heavy cleaning cart near the garage elevators. She looked pale, kept casting nervous glances towards the garage entrance. Hey, Jazz, you ever notice the lights acting weird down there? I asked casually. She jumped, startled. That place, she whispered, pulling her cart closer defensively. Gives me the creeps. Bad air. Bad feeling. I clean the entrance lobby, that's it. Never go down. Her genuine fear was more convincing than Sarah's dismissal. Near the end of another shift, I passed Mr. Pendleton locking up his small electronics repair shop. Late night, Mr. Pendleton? He peered at me over his glasses, tools still in hand. Always Mr. Maxwell, always chasing ghosts in the machine. He gestured vaguely. Interference gets worse every year. Strange signals on the scope sometimes. Makes the equipment act up. This whole building, it hums with things it shouldn't. Sarah's presence felt constant, even when she wasn't physically nearby. She'd query my patrol timings, ask seemingly innocuous questions about specific areas. See anything unusual near the old department store wing, Maxwell? Hear anything out of place by the rear loading docks? It felt less like supervision, more like surveillance. Was she checking up on me or checking for something? One particularly quiet night, while swapping out the battery in my issued radio in the cramped security office, my fingers brushed against something taped underneath the shelf where the spare batteries were kept. A small, folded piece of paper. Heart pounding? I unfolded it. Scrawled in hurried, messy handwriting were just 3 words. Don't trust, Essa. The dead hours between 3 and 4 a.m. were always the worst. The silence deepened, the air grew heavy, and the vast emptiness of the Palmetto Galleria felt acutely, unnervingly personal. I was patrolling the long, deserted corridor connecting the food court to the anchor store wing. Linoleum stretching endlessly under the buzzing lights. Utter silence. Then, I heard it. Unmistakable. The rapid patter of small, bare feet on the tile, coming from further down the hall. My head snapped up. A flash of movement darted across the far end of the corridor, disappearing behind a bank of defunct elevators. Just a glimpse. Small figure, maybe wearing something pale, outdated looking. A child. Here, now, every instinct screamed at me to run, to investigate, to help. Who would leave a kid here? Do not chase. The rule slammed into my mind like a physical barrier. I froze, muscles locked, straining my ears. The footsteps had vanished completely. No echo, no fading patter, just absolute, impossible silence. Had I imagined it, or had I just ignored a lost, terrified child? A cold wave of guilt and confusion washed over me. Things got weirder after that, subtler. A mannequin in a closed clothing store window, its head slightly tilted, as if watching me pass, only to be facing straight ahead when I looped back minutes later. The faint, tinkling melody of a music box, seeming to drift from the overhead past speakers for just a second before vanishing into static, cold spots that would bloom in the middle of a warm corridor, raising goosebumps, then dissipating as quickly as they appeared. The feeling of being watched intensified, not just by Sierra, but by the building itself. When I mentioned the cold spots to Jazz during one of her late shifts, she nodded slowly, not meeting my eyes. "Yeah," she whispered, wiping down a glass display case with extra vigor. Sometimes I see little handprints on the glass right after I clean it. Like, right after. Where nobody's been. Driven by mounting unease, I started spending my downtime digging into the Palmetto Galleria's past. Old newspaper archives online, forgotten local blogs. Construction was plagued by delays, budget overruns, whispers of unstable ground. An unusual number of worker accidents, vaguely reported. Then I found it. A short article from about 15 years ago, right around the time Sarah must have started working here according to the seniority roster. A young night guard, barely out of his teens, reported missing. Last seen clocking in for his shift at the Galleria. Never seen again. His car was found abandoned in the employee parking lot days later. The case went cold, swallowed by time and indifference. The main atrium of the Palmetto Galleria was its decaying heart. A vast, three-story space crowned with a grimy skylight that barely let in the moonlight. In the center sat a large, multi-tiered fountain, ornate and gaudy in a way that screamed late 80s optimism, now perpetually dry and silent, usually. Tonight was different. As I rounded the corner on my patrol route leading into the atrium, a sound reached me. A wet, gurgling, splashing sound that didn't belong. My steps slowed. Turning the final corner, I froze, disbelief warring with horror. The fountain was running. Cascading down the faux marble tiers wasn't water. It was a thick, viscous, dark red liquid that glistened wetly under the atrium lights. The air was suddenly thick with the unmistakable coppery, metallic stench of blood, overpowering the usual smells of disinfectant and stale popcorn. It pooled in the basin, splashing, gurgling, obscenely alive in the dead heart of the mall. Do not report it. The third rule hammered at my sanity. This was wrong, fundamentally, horrifically wrong. Every fiber of my being screamed to get on the radio. Call Sarah, call 911. Call somebody. But the memory of the vanished guard, the intensity in Sarah's eyes, the impossible things I'd already seen. I swallowed hard against the rising bile, tasting the coppery scent on my tongue. My hands were shaking, forcing my legs to move. I deliberately turned my back on the grotesque spectacle, continuing my patrol route as if nothing was amiss, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The splashing sound seemed to follow me, mockingly loud in the echoing space. Ladder. When I forced myself to check the security camera feed for the atrium from the office monitor, the screen flickered, displaying static for the relevant time period before showing the fountain. Dry and inert as always. Maybe 10 minutes later, my radio crackled. Sarah's voice, calm and level. Maxwell status report, atrium sector. My throat felt tight. Sector clear. Bellwether, I managed, hoping my voice didn't betray the tremor I felt. All quiet. A pause. Good, she said. The word clipped. Keep it that way. It felt less like an instruction, more like a threat. I risked talking to Mr. Pendleton as he was packing up. Smell anything weird tonight, Mr. Pendleton? Near the atrium? Near the atrium? He adjusted his glasses, looking tired. This old place always smells weird, son, he sighed. Tonight, maybe a bit. Metallic, like bad wiring overheating, or old plumbing backing up. Hard to tell. Place has moods. He paused, lowering his voice. Heard Sarah talking about the fountain pump needing work again, though. Strange. Seemed fine yesterday. She's been here longer than anyone you know. Knows this building's guts better than the engineers. Ladder. Back in the relative safety of the security office. The memory of the blood fountain vivid and sickening. I remembered the hidden compartment under the floor tile I'd found earlier. The one with the old logbooks. There was another item tucked in the back. I hadn't examined closely. A small, cheap digital audio recorder. Dented and scratched. Praying it still had power, I pressed the play button. Static hissed for several seconds. Then a young man's voice. Panicked. Breathless. It's not water. Oh God, it's not. Sierra, you see this, right? We have to report. The voice cut off abruptly, replaced by a sharp scuffling sound. Then another voice, cold, calm, instantly recognizable. Sierra Bellwether, Rule 3, kid. You report nothing. A muffled thump. Then silence. The recording ended. None there. Adiko. I saw her. I'm the... My blood ran cold. The damaged recorder feeling heavy as lead in my hand. Sierra's calm, chilling voice echoed in my ears. Rule 3, kid. You report nothing. Followed by that sickening thump. She wasn't just enforcing rules. She was disposing of problems. Of people like me. My breath hitched. I had to get out. Get this recording to someone, anyone. I shoved the recorder into my pocket and reached for the office door, trying to appear calm, casual. Too late. Sarah Bellwether stood framed in the doorway, blocking my exit, her face an unreadable mask. But her eyes held a cold reptilian stillness I hadn't seen before. Find something interesting, Maxwell? She asked, her voice dangerously soft. She glanced pointedly at the disturbed floor tile near my feet, where the logbooks and recorder had been hidden. My heart hammered against my ribs. Just checking the logs, I stammered, trying to edge past her. She didn't move. Instead, she calmly reached over and clicked the lock on the office door. The previous occupants of this office didn't understand, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, yet cutting through the sudden tense silence. They panicked. They asked too many questions. They tried to report things that shouldn't be reported. She took a slow step towards me. This mall. It has a rhythm, Maxwell. A balance. It doesn't like being disturbed. And I don't like it being disturbed. As she spoke, the lights in the small office flickered violently, casting her face in strobing, demonic shadows. A low moan seemed to emanate from the very walls around us, vibrating through the floor. The temperature dropped sharply, my breath misting in the air. What are you talking about? I backed away, bumping against the desk. What balance? The kind where things are kept quiet, she hissed, her composure finally cracking, revealing the raw, desperate fear beneath. Where the appearances are maintained, years I've kept it stable. Years dealing with the glitches, making sure no one rocks the boat. The overhead light fixture suddenly exploded in a shower of sparks and glass, plunging the office into near darkness, lit only by the emergency exit sign's red glow. "And then you come along," Sarah screamed, lunging towards me. No longer the calm supervisor, but something feral, cornered, seeing things, hearing things, finding things. I dodged her grasp, shoving the desk between us. The moan from the walls intensified, rising to a guttural shriek that seemed to echo from everywhere at once. On the small security monitor still flickering on the desk, I saw the camera feeds go haywire. The atrium fountain feed showed pulsing red. The corridor cameras filled with static or fleeting, distorted shapes. The mannequins in the department store feed seemed to jerk and turn towards the camera. The echo was awake, agitated, and Sarah seemed to be its trigger, or perhaps its unwilling conductor. She came around the desk faster than I expected, grabbing my arm with surprising strength. "You should have just kept walking, Maxwell. Followed the rules." Her eyes were wide, frantic. From the hallway outside the locked door, I heard a high-pitched electronic screech. The Morse POS system, coming alive, broadcasting not Muzak, but a terrifying cacophony of distorted screams and whispers. Sarah flinched, distracted for a crucial second. I wrenched my arm free and made a break for the door, fumbling with the lock she'd engaged. Suddenly, a heavy metal door buckled inwards with a deafening crash, as if struck by immense force from the outside. It flew open, revealing the corridor beyond, but it wasn't empty. Standing there, bathed in the hellish red emergency light, were three mannequins ripped from a nearby storefront window, their plastic limbs twisted at unnatural angles, painted smiles seeming to stretch into terrifying grimaces. They lurched forward, moving with jerky, puppet-like steps. Sarah screamed, stumbling back. This was beyond even her control now. The echo was physically manifesting, using the mall's own dead materials. I saw my chance. While Sarah was momentarily frozen by the new horror, I ducked past her, out into the shrieking corridor. I ran, the sound of plastic limbs scraping and clattering on the tile behind me. Doors along the corridor slammed open and shut violently. Lights exploded overhead. The PA system shrieked my name amidst the static. Leo. Stay. I needed to get out of this wing. Maybe find Pendleton. Maybe disable the power as he'd hinted might calm the interference. I sprinted towards the service stairwell at the end of the hall. But Sarah recovered quickly. "You won't expose this," she shrieked, chasing after me surprisingly fast. Ahead, near the stairwell door, I saw a flash of movement. Yasmin Kaur, huddled near her cleaning cart, eyes wide with terror, paralyzed by the chaos. Sarah saw her too. "Get out of the way, girl," Sarah snarled, shoving past Jazz towards me. The shove sent Jazz stumbling back against a large electrical panel on the wall. The one Pendleton had pointed out once, muttering about manual overrides and killing the juice to this whole damn wing if things get hairy. Jazz hit the panel hard. Sparks flew. The main corridor lights died completely, plunging everything into absolute darkness, save for the distant red glow of exit signs. The power system cut off mid-screen. The clattering mannequins behind me faltered, then stopped. Even Zara paused in the sudden, deafening silence and blackness. "Jazz," I whispered into the dark. A frightened whimper was my only reply. Then, from the direction of the stairwell, a new sound began. A low, wet, dragging noise, accompanied by the faint, unmistakable smell of copper. Something else was moving in the dark now, drawn by the chaos, or perhaps unleashed by the power cut. I couldn't see Sarah, couldn't see the mannequins, couldn't see anything but the terrifying red exit sign beckoning me towards the stairs. towards escape, or perhaps towards something worse waiting in the unlit depths below. Absolute darkness slammed down, thick and suffocating, broken only by the faint, hellish red glow of distant emergency signs. The sudden silence was almost as terrifying as the previous chaos, amplifying the frantic thudding of my own heart and the ragged gasp of my breath. Then, the new sound, that low, wet, dragging noise, seemingly coming from the direction Sierra had been standing, accompanied by the sharp, unmistakable coppery tang of fresh blood hitting the air. Something heavy was being pulled across the tile floor in the pitch blackness. Sierra, I whispered instinctively, foolishly. No reply, just the steady, rhythmic thump, thump of whatever was moving in the dark. Jazz, I called out, louder this time, towards where I'd last seen her near the electrical panel. Only silence answered, deepening the pit of fear in my stomach. Had she run? Was she hurt? Or had the thing doing the dragging found her first? I couldn't stay here. Blindly, I pushed myself away from the wall, hands outstretched, stumbling through the darkness towards the red glow marking the stairwell exit. My fingers brushed against something yielding and metallic. Jazz's abandoned cleaning cart. Empty. I fumbled past it, reaching the heavy stairwell door. It opened with a groan, leading into an equally dark concrete shaft. The dragging sound seemed fainter here, muffled by the closed door behind me. Down or up? Down led deeper into the service levels, potentially towards an exit near the loading docks, if I remember the blueprints correctly. Up led back towards the main mall levels I knew slightly better. Down felt like descending into a tomb. I chose down, relying on the emergency lighting strips that cast just enough faint red light to see the steps immediately in front of me. Each step echoed unnervingly in the confined space. The air was cold, damp, smelling of dust and mildew. My body screamed with adrenaline crash, leaving me shaky, exhausted, my scraped fingers stinging. What had Jazz hitting the panel unleashed? Or had Sierra's breakdown, her confrontation, simply pushed the mall's resident echo over some invisible edge? And what was that dragging sound? The image of the blood fountain flashed in my mind. Reaching the bottom level felt like entering another world. Service corridors stretched out, dimly lit, pipes snaking overhead, unfamiliar machinery humming faintly. The dragging sound was gone, but the silence down here felt different, watchful, ancient. I navigated by instinct, following signs for loading bay C, praying it led outside. Every flicker of the emergency lights, every distant clank of pipes, sent jolts of fear through me. The entire building felt hostile now, aware, breathing shallowly in the dark around me. Escaping the immediate confrontation with Sarah hadn't ended the threat. It had just left me alone, injured, and lost in the belly of the beast. The vast, echoing structure of the Palmetto Galleria, once just a dead-end job, was now my own personal labyrinth, and I wasn't sure if there was truly a way out. Hours seemed to pass in the disorienting maze of service corridors and darkened mall walkways. Time lost all meaning, measured only by the pounding of my heart and the desperate need to find an exit. Moonlight filtering through the atrium's high, grimy skylight painted eerie, shifting patterns on the floor below, making familiar shapes seem monstrous. I avoided the atrium itself, the memory of the fountain, and the recent dragging sound, too fresh, too terrifying. Finally, guided by a faded emergency exit sign near the back of the shuttered department store wing, I found it, a heavy alarmed fire door. With shaking hands, I slammed my shoulder against the push bar, an alarm shriek piercingly behind me, loud enough to wake the dead, but I didn't care. The door swung open, revealing not the sterile mall interior, but the thick, humid embrace of the pre-dawn Florida air, smelling of wet asphalt and freedom. I stumbled out into the employee parking lot, gasping, knees weak with relief. The alarm continued its frantic cry behind me, unanswered in the sleeping world outside the mall's cursed walls. I didn't look back. I didn't retrieve my belongings from the locker. I didn't even think about my final paycheck. I fumbled for my car keys, slid into the driver's seat, locked the doors, and drove. I drove until the Palmetto Galleria was a distant shape in my rearview mirror. Then until it disappeared completely. I drove until the sun rose, painting the sky in colors that felt clean, untainted. I didn't stop until I crossed the state line. I found a cheap motel, slept for nearly 20 hours, then kept moving. I ditched my phone, got a new number, withdrew what little cash I had. I didn't contact anyone from Tampa. What could I say, and who would believe me? Trying to expose Abernathy, or whatever was left of Sierra, felt impossible. Suicidal even. The mall kept its secrets. My only priority was putting as much distance as possible between myself and that place. Months later, I was in a small town hundreds of miles north, working a quiet library job, trying to convince myself I was safe, that it was over. The nights were the hardest. Every flickering light, every distant laugh, every plumbing gurgle sent a jolt of fear through me. I lived in a state of constant low-grade anxiety, always looking over my shoulder. One rainy evening, I was making coffee in my small apartment kitchen. I turned on the tap to fill the kettle. For a split second, just a fraction of a second, before the clear water flowed, the water that sputtered out was thick, brownish red, carrying the faint, unmistakable, coppery tang of blood. I recoiled, heart leaping into my throat, staring at the clear water, now running innocently. Just rusty pipes, I told myself desperately. Old building, bad plumbing. But I knew better. The Palmetto Galleria wasn't just a place, it was a stain, and somehow, some way, it had followed me home. I left. I survived. But the Galleria, it doesn't just let people go. I thought I could run, but sometimes the lights in my hallway buzz like the ones from the garage. Sometimes I hear feet in the dark, and sometimes just for a second the water runs red. So if you're still here, if you made it through, thank you. But don't think it ends when the credits roll. Some rules follow you, and some jobs never really let you clock out. Subscribe to Night Creepypasta Rules if you want more stories like this. Comment if you've ever worked a job that felt wrong. And remember, if the lights start blinking in Morse code, don't decode. Hunter Zigar.